Hello everybody and welcome to Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans, True Aussie Murders Caffeinated. I am your host, Belinda Brady, and welcome guys. Welcome to episode 10. We've hit double digits. Woohoo! How good is that? And if you have been listening to me since my first episode, which really is, I'm still so new. Honestly, thank you guys so much. I can't thank you enough. And if you are liking my episodes, please get the word out there. Share, comment, leave a comment on Spotify, hit that little star button, do whatever you need to do or whatever you want to do. Anything is absolutely appreciated. Now, first up, I'm still drinking my cinnamon swirl coffee syrup. So I'm having a black coffee with cinnamon swirl syrup, but I'm on to the last of it. So I'll start a new bottle and I'm sure I'll be onto something new by the next episode. And my sources straight up for my episode today. My sources are victimsofhomicide.fandom.com, www.abcnet.au, murderpedia.org. Now, straight off the bat, this episode talks about domestic violence and cannibalism and murder, and I will swear in this one. So if this is not for you, that is A-OK. You do not have to listen. I totally get it. This episode is not for you, and I am not your gal today. But if this is what you can and want to listen to, then buckle up, my friends, because this is a hell of a story. And if we didn't know for a fact that it did happen, we would honestly probably believe that it didn't happen and someone was just telling us lies. So get yourself comfy, get settled, get a drink, get a cocktail, get a bourbon and Coke, get whatever tickles your fancy. And if you are having a bourbon and Coke, please have one for me and get settled. And if you're not, go get what you need, come back, put me on pause and come back to me. And we will get started with episode 10 of Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans. And this episode is titled Served for Supper, the Murder of John Price. Today's episode also takes place in a town called Aberdeen in New South Wales, Australia. Now, Aberdeen is a small country rural town, very close-knit community, very average Australian town until something so absolutely gruesome and horrific happened that it put it on the map. But unfortunately, for all the wrong reasons. Katherine Knight was born on the 24th of October 1955, and she was a twin to her sister Joy. Now, before she even took her first breath, scandal surrounded her as her mother Barbara had been having an affair with a man by the name of Ken Knight, who was her friend and co-worker of her then husband John. Backlash forced Barbara and Ken to move to another town in New South Wales called Moree, but her sons stayed in Aberdeen with their father John. Barbara and Ken went on to have 4 children together, Katherine and her twin sister Joy being 2 of them. And when the girls were around 4 years old, John passed away, and as a result, 2 of her oldest stepbrothers moved into the Moree house with them. Now, Ken was said to be a violent alcoholic who would rape Katherine's mother up to 10 times a day. As a result, Barbara would tell her daughters how much she hated men and how much she hated sex. Now, sadly, Katherine was not immune to the horrors of the Knight household, with her allegedly being sexually abused by several family members, though she was insistent her father Ken was not one of her abusers. Her school life was not much better either, with students remembering her as a girl who would absolutely lose her mind. The term murderous rage was used when she didn't get her way, and she was also remembered as being a bully, as someone who stood over the smaller children. The family moved back to Aberdeen not long after the suicide of one of Katherine's favourite uncles, Uncle Oscar, and she left school at 15 and got a job in a clothing factory before giving it up 12 months later when she scored her dream job as an offal cutter in a local abattoir. Katherine was so good at her job, she was quickly promoted to boner and given a set of butcher knives, which she hung up proudly over her bed so they would always be, quote, handy if I needed them. A habit she kept until she was jailed. Katherine was well known around Aberdeen as physically threatening anyone who pissed her off, and by all reports, that wasn't hard to achieve. Katherine met her first husband, David Kellett, in 1973 and absolutely dominated him from the get-go. If anyone tried to pick a fight with him or argued with him at a local pub, Katherine would step in and stand by her man, often with violence. Katherine and David were married in 1974, and she arrived to their service on her motorbike with a very drunk David waiting for her at the altar. Now, Katherine's very own mother, Barbara, had some sage advice for her new son-in-law. Quote, "You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her, she'll fucking kill you." And he went on to say, she told me that she's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. And unfortunately for David, he didn't have to wait too long to find out that his mother-in-law's words were true, not even 24 hours actually, because Katherine, annoyed with him only being able to have sex with her 3 times on their wedding night, tried to strangle him. Sadly, this was what life with Katherine would be like for David, and when she was heavily pregnant, she went into a rage after David come home late from a darts competition in which he made the final. She didn't give a shit that he made the final. She wanted him home. She burned all his clothes before hitting her terrified husband across the back of the head with a frying pan. The blow so heavy she fractured his skull. In fear of his life, David ran to a neighbour's house before he collapsed and the cops were called. Now, the police wanted to press charges on Katherine, but Katherine, just like any abuser, turned on the charm and got her injured husband to drop the charges. Now, in May 1976, not long after the birth of their first daughter, Melissa, David, having had enough of his violent, possessive wife, left Katherine for another woman and fled to another state. The state he fled to was Queensland. Katherine was soon, not long after he left her, seen walking down the main street of Aberdeen, pushing a pram with baby Melissa in it and violently swinging the pram from side to side. Katherine was taken to hospital where she was diagnosed with postnatal depression and spent several weeks as an inpatient getting treatment. When she got out, however, Katherine put her 2-month-old daughter on a railway track and left her there to be hit by a train. She also, at this time, grabbed an axe and went into town, just swinging it at passers-by. Luckily for her baby, Melissa, who she left on the railway tracks, her saviour was a local man known as Old Ted, who was foraging by the railway's tracks and heard the baby's cries. He rescued her just minutes before a train passed by. Now, Katherine was again admitted to hospital but discharged against medical advice the next day. But if anyone thought Katherine's, rage had finished there, no. She was just getting started. Now, a few days after she tried to kill her daughter, she slashed a woman who has remained nameless across the face and demanded she drive her to Queensland so she could find her husband. The terrified woman only managed to escape when they stopped at a service station, which in some parts of the world is known as a gas station, and called the police. But by the time the police had arrived, Katherine had taken a little boy hostage, and after a tense standoff, he was eventually rescued by police. And Katherine was arrested and admitted to Morisset Psychiatric Hospital in New South Wales. Katherine apparently told nurses there that she had planned to kill the mechanic who fixed David's car, as this helped him escape her and then kill both David and his mother when she arrived in Queensland. Now, upon hearing this, David, quite unbelievably, and reasons I guess only known to himself, left his girlfriend and the safety of Queensland and returned to New South Wales, where where Katherine was released into his and her mother's care. Katherine, David and her mother moved to Queensland to a suburb called Woodridge, and Katherine got a job in Dinmore Meatworks, which was located near a suburb called Ipswich. On the 6th of March 1980, she gave birth to the couple's second daughter, Natasha, and she eventually left David, moving back to Aberdeen for a minute before renting a house in nearby Muswellbrook. Katherine returned to work at the abattoir that she worked at before she moved away, but that was short-lived as she hurt her back and couldn't work anymore. So Katherine was now on a disability pension, and she managed to score a housing commission house, which I believe is known as the projects in some parts of the world. So she managed to score a housing commission house in Aberdeen, which suited her fine as she was close to her mother and she was close to her kids' school. Katherine also found herself in another relationship with a man by the name of David Saunders. David was a lovable bloke whose only fault, I guess, if you want to call it that, was he liked to drink too much and he fell for an absolute monster. But still, he said she had a charming exterior, and the fact that she had a high sex drive was the icing on the cake for the 38-year-old. The two met in 1986, and after a few months, he and his daughters moved in with Katherine, but he kept his apartment in Scone, which was a nearby suburb, which really pissed Katherine off because why did he need to keep that apartment when she was living with him? Now, Katherine soon became jealous of the time David spent away from her and would constantly accuse him of cheating, with the pair at each other's throats often. Katherine would often kick David out of their home, and she would then be knocking on the door of his Scone apartment, begging her for forgiveness, and David always took her back. Before too long, as Katherine's pattern, shows, their fights turned physical, with Katherine always attacking David with whatever she could get her hands on. It has also been widely reported that she cut the throat of a 2-month-old puppy, showing David what she could do if she wanted to. And after this horrifying display, she knocked him unconscious with a frying pan. Again, for reasons only known to David, he still stayed with her, and they went on to have a child together, a daughter they called Sarah. The growing family prompted David to put a deposit on a house, and when Katherine's workers' compensation payout came from when she hurt her back at the abattoir, she went all out decorating the new family home. Now, most of us would pick, beautiful dining sets, a nice table, a nice lounge set. No, Katherine decorated the home with skulls, knives, animal skins, machetes, etc., etc. It was wall-to-wall, ceiling to floor, death and dying, every corner of that house. Now, things came to a head when her and David had yet another argument, which resulted in her hitting him in the head with an iron and stabbing him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. He fled the home and moved back to his apartment in Scone before taking leave from his job and going into hiding. Now, Katherine tried to find him, but to no avail, because no one was willing to give up his location. So Katherine, undeterred, marched herself into a police station and told police she was afraid of him and asked for an AVO. Unbelievably, it was granted. Now, Katherine never had trouble attracting men, and true to form, she found another man to latch on to soon after filing a AVO against her battered ex, and this time it was a man by the name of John Chillingworth, a 43-year-old abattoir meat worker and described as a local knockabout. The pair welcomed a son, Eric, in 1991, and the couple amazingly lasted 3 years, a shock to many who knew her and knew her personality and knew her history. And it only ended when Katherine started having an affair with John Price. So she went on and did exactly what she accused every partner of doing and cheated. Only this time, the man she was having an affair with would be the man that she would end up killing. John Price, or Pricey as he was known, and that's how I will refer to him for this episode, for the remainder of this episode, was born on the 5th of April 1955, and at 38 years old, he met Katherine at a local hotel. Now, Pricey was well known and loved. His friends said he was generous and he would give you the shirt off his back if you needed it. Everyone who met him liked him, which was a huge contrast from Katherine. He had 3 children with his ex-wife, but 2 of them, a teenage boy and girl, lived with him in the house he owned in Aberdeen. He got paid well from his job in the mines and his kids wanted for nothing. Now, when he first got with Katherine, as usual, things between the two were great. Katherine cooked, cleaned and doted on John, and their kids got along beautifully. But it didn't take long for Katherine to get back to her crazy ways, accusing him of cheating, fighting, separating with him and then getting back together, etc., etc. In late 1995, Katherine moved into John's house in Aberdeen on St Andrews Street, where the drinking and fighting only escalated. Now, in 1998, as some kind of a revenge for Pricey refusing to marry her, she videotaped items that Pricey had stolen from work and used that video to blackmail him. And after a fight got physical, she sent that video to his boss. Now, Pricey got the sack from his job, and he had been working at this job for 17 years and absolutely loved it. Pissed off, Pricey kicked her out and she retreated back to her Housing Commission House of Horrors in Aberdeen. But only a few months later, they were back together, though she didn't move back in with him. The fights were renewed with venom, and Pricey lost a lot of friends while he was with her because they simply refused to have anything to do with him while he was still with her. They could see what was happening to him, but unfortunately and sadly, Pricey just could not pull away from this woman. Things were spiralling, the fights were getting more and more violent, and on the 28th of Feb 2000, after Katherine stabbed Pricey in the chest with a knife during an argument, Pricey slipped into Scone Magistrates Court on the way to work and applied for an AVO and was granted an AVO against Katherine. He told his co-workers that very day, if anything happened to him, it was Katherine. And despite his co-workers' pleas that he shouldn't return home after what had happened to him, Pricey was worried Katherine would harm his kids if he didn't, and he made his way home. He arrived home to find that Katherine, though she was not in the house herself, had organised sleepovers for the kids, so Pricey had the house to himself. He spent some time with his neighbours before returning to the house at around 11 p.m. Sometime after then, Katherine let herself in, watched TV for a bit, had a shower and then jumped into bed with Pricey, where the two had sex. The next morning, neighbours spotted Pricey's car in his driveway, which was out of character for Pricey as he was always at work. And his boss was also worried as he had failed to show up for work, so sent a colleague around to check on him. Both his work colleague and neighbour tried knocking on Pricey's bedroom window, but when they spotted blood on his front door, they called police, who arrived soon after. What the police were confronted with when they opened that front door is almost unbelievable. Police entered the house via the back door, which led them to the kitchen. There, a human skin was hanging from a meat hook in the hallway. It extended from the top of the doorway to the floor. It was an entire human skin, and it had black curly hair at the top, a nose, a bit of a mouth, and pubic hair. Beyond that gruesome sight was a headless and skinless body and an obscene amount of blood. There was blood on the hallway wall, on the floor, and leading from the main bedroom. There was also blood leading to the front door. There was also blood in the bedroom, sprayed on the walls, but only a moderate amount compared to what was in the rest of the house. There was also a blood trail from the lounge room to the kitchen cooktop, and on the stove was a pot that was still warm to the touch. The pot contained warm liquid and a human head, a skinned human head. Next to this pot was a baking tray with a few leftover baked vegetables. Not far from the tray were 2 dinner plates with some kind of cooked meat and vegetables on it. And there, in handwritten name cards, written on kitchen paper, were the words Becky on one and Jonathan on the other. And these were the names of Pricey's children. The meat on the plates was similar to the funny-looking meat the police had found on the back lawn when they were letting themselves into Pricey's house. It looked like it had been eaten a little bit or attempted to be eaten, but they didn't think anything of it because at that time they did not know what they were looking at. It is now thought that Katherine tried to eat part of John, but maybe could not bring herself to do it and threw it out on his lawn. Blood had been left on everything, from vegetable peelers to an electric jug. 2 blood-stained knives were found. Boxes of prescription pills were found, with many of them missing. It was clear to police that John had been dragged from the front entry and he had been skinned and decapitated in the hallway lounge room. The cooked meat on the plates and found in John's backyard was believed to have been his buttocks that Katherine had cooked and served up for his children to eat. Police found a blood-stained handwritten note written by someone with very basic spelling and grammar, which read, "Time got you back, Jonathan, for raping my daughter. You to Beck for Ross, little John. Now play with little John's dick, John Price." Now, these allegations of rape were baseless and never found to be true. Police also found a passed-out Katherine Knight not far from John's lifeless, skinless, headless body. Apparently, she had OD'd on the medication and an ambulance was called for her and she was rushed to hospital where she survived. John Pricey, had been stabbed a total of 37 times. He tried to fight her off, tried to escape, and the blood trail in his house shows his desperate battle to stay alive. Blood splatters on the bedroom wall indicate that he woke up while being stabbed and managed to get out of his bedroom and to the front door before collapsing or dying in the front hallway, where a crazed Katherine then dragged him back into the main part of the house and skinned him and decapitated him. Katherine then positioned his body with an arm draped over an empty soft drink bottle and crossed his legs, which was thought to be an act of Katherine demonstrating her absolute contempt for John. Police stated he was absolutely fighting for his life and his last moments would have been absolutely horrific. He tried to get out. He tried to stay alive. He tried to get out of that house and he nearly made it, with Katherine following him, slashing and stabbing him before he collapsed or was simply overpowered. His last moments would have been absolutely horrific. After killing Pricey as a final fuck you, Katherine took his bank card and withdrew $1,000 from a nearby ATM. Unbelievably, Katherine tried to plead guilty to manslaughter, but it was rejected and she was charged with murder. She stood trial on the 15th of October 2001. The judge offered the jury the option of being excused due to the graphic and upsetting nature of the crime, and several took that offer. But when Katherine changed her plea to guilty, the rest of the jury was dismissed. 2 psychiatrists concluded that Katherine had borderline personality disorder, and though she did change her plea to guilty, she has never accepted any responsibility for her actions. In fact, she went as far as to ask to be excused from court to avoid hearing some of the gruesome details of her crime. And when she was refused, when it came to the court describing her skinning and decapitating John, she apparently became hysterical and had to be sedated. On the 8th of November 2001, Justice O'Keefe pointed out the nature of the crime and Katherine's lack of remorse and sentenced her to life in prison, with her papers marked definitely never to be released. the first time such a penalty had been imposed on a woman in Australia. In 2006, Katherine appealed the severity of her sentence, which was quickly dismissed. Katherine will see out her days in Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre in New South Wales, where she has apparently taken up a leadership role among her fellow prisoners. Of course she has. I mean, you're not going to go up against her, are you? Not with her history. So there we have it, guys. The tale of a violent, sadistic woman who would rather kill, skin and decapitate her partner than have him leave. A sorry tale of a woman who had such a vile past of bullying, violence and brutality. How she was not on anyone's radar when she killed John Price is absolutely mind-blowing. It is a sad reminder that domestic violence happens to all of us, men and women. And if this episode has made you upset or made you realise you need some help, please reach out to domestic violence support services in your area. They are there to help you and they will help you. And for Pricey's family, I can only say I hope you were able to find peace and remember the good times they had with their father, and know that the nation, the country was absolutely heartbroken by what happened to your father. Totally uncalled for, totally unnecessary, and he seemed like such a beautiful man. My heart goes out to absolutely all of you. And that's it, guys. Another episode of Crime Scenes with Coffee Beans, done and dusted. Episode 10, served for supper, the murder of John Price. Thank you all for listening. Again, I'll say it, you are all absolute rock stars. And if you are liking these episodes, please hit like, hit comment. Give me a comment, give me a like, give me a star, share with your friends, share with your garbage man, share with your milkman, share far and share wide. I would absolutely so appreciate it. And until next time, guys, stay safe, stay cool, and stay caffeinated. I will catch you all later.